The phone call came at 2 in the morning, shattering the peace of our bedroom like a gunshot through glass. I woke to Cameron's voice, rough with sleep and fear. "What do you mean he's missing?" And then the world tilted sideways because Wyatt's side of the bed was empty, the sheets cold, and Cameron was already pulling on jeans with hands that shook. "How long?" Cameron demanded into the phone, and I sat up, heart hammering. "Jesus Christ, Marco, why didn't you call sooner?" I was out of bed before he hung up, grabbing clothes in the dark. "What happened? Where's Wyatt?" Cameron's face was white in the moonlight streaming through the window. "There was an accident. One of the mares got spooked during evening check, bolted through a fence. Wyatt went after her on horseback 3 hours ago. His radio's dead and his horse came back without him." The words hit me like physical blows. 3 hours. Wyatt had been out there alone for 3 hours, and anything could have happened. A fall, an injury, the mare could have kicked him. He could be unconscious or worse, and I couldn't breathe because the thought of losing him made my chest feel like it was caving in. "We need to go," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Now." Cameron looked at me, really looked, and I saw my own terror reflected in his eyes. But he nodded, grabbed his keys, and we were running for the truck before either of us remembered to breathe. Marco met us at the barn with two of the other ranch hands, flashlights and worry etched into every line of their faces. "We've been searching the north pasture," he said. "That's where the mare was headed, but it's rough terrain out there, lots of ravines and—" "I know the terrain," Cameron cut him off. "Eli, you're with me. Marco, take the others and work the eastern ridge. Radio if you find anything." We mounted up, me on Cameron's steadiest gelding, him on a big roan that could handle his weight, and rode out into the darkness. The moon was 3/4 full, bright enough to see by, but shadows turned everything sinister. Every rock looked like a body. Every rustle of wind sounded like a cry for help. Cameron rode ahead, his spine rigid with tension, and I followed because I didn't know what else to do. My mind kept spiraling to dark places. Wyatt bleeding, Wyatt unconscious, Wyatt cold and alone somewhere thinking we weren't coming. The mare could be miles away by now. Wyatt could be anywhere. "He's fine," I said out loud, trying to convince myself. "He has to be fine." Cameron glanced back, and even in the moonlight I could see the fear he was trying to hide. "Wyatt's tough. He survived worse than a spooked horse." "What if he hit his head? What if he's hypothermic? It's cold out here, Cameron, and he's been alone for—" "Don't," Cameron said sharply. "Don't go there, Eli. We're going to find him and he's going to be fine, and you spiraling into worst-case scenarios doesn't help anyone." He was right, but knowing it and feeling it were two different things. I focused on the rhythm of the horse beneath me, on scanning the landscape for any sign of movement, on not thinking about how much it would destroy me if something happened to Wyatt. We rode for what felt like hours but was probably 40 minutes, calling his name into the darkness, getting nothing back but echoes and silence. Then Cameron pulled up short, held up a hand for quiet. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. I strained my ears, heard nothing but wind and the shuffle of our horses. Then, there, a sound. Not quite a voice, but definitely not nature. Cameron was already moving, urging his horse down a steep embankment that made my stomach lurch, and I followed because the alternative was staying behind. At the bottom of the ravine, illuminated by Cameron's flashlight, we found him. Wyatt was propped against a boulder, his face pale and drawn with pain, one leg extended at an angle that made me nauseous. The mare stood nearby, reins tangled in some brush, calm now like she hadn't just caused a disaster. And when Wyatt looked up at us, his grin was weak but real. "Took you long enough," he said, and his voice was thready. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me." Cameron was off his horse before it fully stopped, dropping to his knees beside his brother. "You goddamn idiot," he said roughly, and his hands were shaking as they ran over Wyatt's body, checking for injuries. 3 hours, Wyatt, 3 fucking hours. Horse through me, Wyatt said, wincing as Cameron's fingers found his leg. Pretty sure it's broken. Tried to walk out, made it maybe 50 feet before I realized that wasn't happening. Radio shattered when I fell. He looked past Cameron to me and something in his expression softened. Hey, sweetheart, sorry to scare you. I slid off my horse on legs that felt like water and crossed to them, dropping down beside Cameron. Up close, I could see Wyatt was shivering despite the leather jacket he wore, could see the way his jaw was clenched against pain. Without thinking, I shrugged out of my own jacket and draped it over his shoulders. Idiot, I echoed Cameron, but my voice broke on the word. You absolute idiot, I thought. I know, Wyatt said quietly, and his hand found mine squeezed. I'm sorry, but I'm okay. Well, mostly okay. The leg's a problem, but everything else works. Cameron was already on his radio, calling for Marco and the others, arranging for someone to bring the truck as close as possible so we could get Wyatt out without making him walk. His voice was calm, professional, but I could see the tremor in his hands, the way he kept touching Wyatt like he needed the physical confirmation that his brother was alive. We need to keep him warm, I said, forcing my brain into practical mode. And elevate the leg if possible. Does anything else hurt? Your back, your head? Just the leg, Wyatt assured me. And my pride, getting thrown by a mare. The guys are never going to let me live this down. The guys are going to be thrilled you're alive, Cameron corrected. And if anyone gives you shit, they're fired. We waited there in the ravine for 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours, with Wyatt propped between us and both Cameron and I touching him constantly. His shoulder, his hand, his face, like we were afraid he'd disappear if we stopped. Wyatt bore it with grace, made jokes to ease the tension, but I could see the pain wearing on him, the way his breathing got shallower as time passed. When Marco and the others finally arrived with a stretcher and medical supplies, the relief was overwhelming. They loaded Wyatt as carefully as possible, and his hand clenched mine so hard I felt bones grind, but he didn't make a sound. The ride back to the ranch was tense and careful, with Cameron and me flanking the truck bed where Wyatt lay. At the house, we called the doctor, a woman from town who did ranch calls, and she confirmed what we already knew. Clean break, tibia and fibula would need a cast and crutches and 6 weeks of healing. You're lucky, she told Wyatt as she wrapped his leg. Could have been much worse. Could have punctured an artery, could have hit your head on those rocks. You've got 9 lives, Mr. Nelson. Down to 8 now, Wyatt joked weakly, but nobody laughed. After the doctor left and Wyatt was settled in bed with pain medication that made him loopy and affectionate, Cameron and I stood in the hallway outside his room and fell apart simultaneously. I can't do this, Cameron said, his voice raw. Can't go through that again. Waiting, not knowing, thinking. He couldn't finish, and I pulled him into my arms even though he was twice my size, held him while he shook. But we did, I said into his shoulder. We went through it and we found him and he's okay. That's what matters. This time, Cameron said. But what about next time? Ranching is dangerous, Eli. Accidents happen. Animals spook. People get hurt. And I can't. If something happened to him or to you, I don't know if I could. Hey, I said firmly, pulling back to look at him. Look at me, Cameron. We're a team. All 3 of us. And teams stick together, work through the fear, don't run away when things get scary. Something in his expression cracked, and he pulled me close again, pressed his face into my hair. When did you get so wise? He murmured. About 3 hours ago, when I thought my heart was going to stop beating, I admitted. When I realized that loving you both means accepting the risk, means showing up even when I'm terrified. We stood like that for a long moment, holding each other up, before going back into the room where Wyatt was fighting sleep despite the medication. His eyes tracked us as we approached the bed, and he smiled that lazy, drugged smile. My boys, he slurred, both here perfect. Cameron sat on one side of the bed, me on the other, and we each took one of Wyatt's hands. We're not going anywhere. Cameron promised. Good, Wyatt said, already drifting. "'Cause I love you, both of you, so much it's stupid." I felt tears prick my eyes. "We love you too, so much it's stupid." "Stupidest thing ever," Cameron agreed, his voice thick. And as Wyatt finally surrendered to sleep, Cameron and I looked at each other across his body and shared a moment of perfect understanding. This was our life now. The fear and the love and the constant awareness that everything we cared about could disappear in an instant. But it was also the late-night conversations and the shared work and the way three people could become a single unit. We'd chosen this, and we'd keep choosing it every single day, no matter how scared we got. Because love without risk wasn't really love at all. Wyatt was a terrible patient. Within 48 hours of being ordered to stay in bed and rest, he was trying to get up, insisting he could work with a broken leg, and generally making everyone's life difficult with his stubborn refusal to slow down. "I can still check the books," he argued from his bed, where Cameron had forcibly returned him after finding him trying to hobble down the stairs on crutches. "I can make phone calls. I can supervise." "You can rest," Cameron said firmly. "Doctor's orders 6 weeks." 6 weeks is forever. The ranch can't run without me for 6 weeks. "The ranch ran before you were born," I pointed out from the doorway, holding a tray with lunch. "I think it'll survive." Wyatt's scowl was impressive, but I saw the exhaustion around his eyes, the way he was favoring his injured leg even sitting still. The pain medication helped but left him fuzzy and irritable, and the forced inactivity was clearly eating at him. "I'm going crazy," he said as I set the tray across his lap. "I'm not built for sitting still, Eli. You know this." "I do," I agreed, settling on the edge of the bed. "Which is why I brought you something to do." I pulled out a stack of poetry books from behind my back, the ones I'd found hidden on his nightstand weeks ago. "You can read, relax, let your body heal." Wyatt stared at the books, then at me, and something vulnerable crossed his face. "You found my poems." "Months ago," I admitted. "You're good, Wyatt, really good. Maybe this is the universe telling you to focus on something other than horses for a while." He picked up the top book, Neruda, and ran his fingers over the worn cover. "I started reading poetry after my father died," he said quietly. "Cameron threw himself into the ranch, into fixing everything, being strong. I needed something else, something that didn't involve being tough all the time." Cameron shifted in the corner where he'd been lurking, and I saw the surprise on his face. "You never told me that," he said. "You were dealing with enough," Wyatt replied. "Didn't need to burden you with my existential crisis." "Wyatt," Cameron crossed to the bed, sat on Wyatt's other side. "You're my brother. Your crises are my crises. You should have told me." "I'm telling you now." And suddenly, unexpectedly, we were having a conversation we should have had months ago. About how Cameron tried to carry everything alone, how Wyatt hid his deeper feelings behind jokes and bravado, how I'd walked into their lives and somehow given them permission to be honest with each other in ways they hadn't been before. "This isn't just about the broken leg, is it?" I said slowly. "This is about control. About Cameron needing to fix things and Wyatt needing to prove he's okay, and both of you dancing around the fact that you're terrified of losing each other." They both stared at me. Then Wyatt laughed, not his usual booming laugh but something quieter, more genuine. "How does he do that?" he asked Cameron. "How does he see right through us?" "Because he loves us," Cameron said simply. "And love means really seeing people, even the parts they try to hide." Wyatt's expression softened and he reached for Cameron's hand with one of his own, mine with the other. "I'm sorry," he said, "for scaring you, for being stubborn, for not talking about the hard stuff." "I'm sorry too," Cameron said, "for trying to control everything, for not asking what you needed, for almost losing my mind when I thought," he couldn't finish, but he didn't need to. "We're all works in progress," I said, "but we're working on it together. That's what matters." Over the next few weeks, we settled into a new rhythm. Cameron and I split Wyatt's work between us, rising even earlier to get everything done. The ranch hand stepped up too, proving that the operation really could function without Wyatt micromanaging every detail. And slowly, reluctantly, Wyatt learned to let go. I'd find him reading in bed, or writing in a journal I didn't know he kept, or staring out the window with a contemplative expression that was new and a little heartbreaking. The forced rest was changing him, gentling something that had been restless and rough, and I found myself drawn to this quieter version of Wyatt. One afternoon, 2 weeks into his recovery, I came upstairs to find him writing furiously in his journal. He looked up when I entered, and there was an openness in his face that took my breath away. "Can I show you something?" he asked. I crossed to the bed, curious. He handed me the journal, open to a page of verse, messy handwriting, crossed-out words, but undeniably beautiful. A poem about fear and love and choosing to be vulnerable even when it terrified you. "Wyatt," I breathed, "this is gorgeous." "It's about you," he said. "Well, both of you. About how scared I was that night when I couldn't get back, thinking I might never see you again, thinking about all the things I hadn't said." I read the poem again, slower this time, feeling each word like a physical touch. It was raw and honest and so completely Wyatt that my throat tightened with emotion. "Have you shown Cameron?" "Not yet," he admitted. "Wasn't sure if it was too much, too sentimental." "Show him," I urged. "He needs to know this side of you exists, the part that feels things deeply and isn't afraid to name them." That night the three of us sat in Wyatt's room, Cameron and I on either side of him in the massive bed, Wyatt propped up with pillows, while Wyatt read his poem aloud. His voice was uncertain at first, then stronger, and when he finished, the silence was reverent. "I had no idea," Cameron said finally, and his voice was rough with emotion, "that you could do that, that you felt that way." "Been feeling it for a while," Wyatt admitted. "Just didn't have the words until now." Cameron leaned over and kissed him, not the heated kisses they'd shared before, but something tender and profound. A kiss that said, "I see you and I'm sorry and thank you," all at once. Then he pulled back and looked at me. "We're lucky to have you, Eli, both of us. You make us better versions of ourselves." "You make each other better," I corrected. "I just hold up a mirror sometimes." "Don't diminish what you bring," Wyatt said seriously. "Before you, Cameron and I were just functioning, going through the motions. You made us remember how to really live." I felt my eyes prick with tears and I leaned into Cameron's shoulder, reached for Wyatt's hand. "I love you both," I said, "so much. And seeing you like this, honest with each other, vulnerable, it's everything I didn't know I needed." We stayed like that for a long time, tangled together in the bed, talking about everything and nothing. About Wyatt's poetry and Cameron's fears and my own uncertainty about my father, who was doing better but still struggled. About the future of the ranch and whether we'd ever tell people the truth about our relationship or keep it private. "I don't care what people think," Wyatt said. "I just want to be able to hold your hand in public without worrying about judgment." "We'll get there," Cameron promised. "One day, for now this is enough." And it was more than enough. It was everything. 4 weeks into Wyatt's recovery, with his cast due to come off in 2 weeks and life starting to feel normal again, my father showed up unannounced. I was in the barn checking on a pregnant mare when Marco came running. "Eli, there's someone here to see you, says he's your dad." My stomach dropped. I hadn't invited him, hadn't even mentioned to him where exactly the ranch was located. But somehow he'd found us, and now he stood in our driveway looking small and uncertain, hat in hand like the day I'd left. Cameron found me frozen in the barn doorway, staring at my father from 50 yards away. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," I admitted. "I didn't expect this." "Want me to send him away?" I considered it. God, I considered it, but something in my father's posture, the nervous way he shifted his weight, the hope and fear on his face, made me shake my head. No, I should talk to him. Cameron's hand found the small of my back. A brief touch of support, and then I was walking across the yard while my heart tried to climb out of my chest. "Dad," I said when I reached him, "what are you doing here?" "I needed to see you," he said, and his voice was different from the last time we'd spoken. Steadier. "Needed to see that you were really okay, that you weren't just saying it to make me feel better." I studied him, noted the changes. He'd lost weight, but in a healthy way. His eyes were clear. His hands didn't shake. He looked like a man who'd been working on himself, and I felt something in my chest loosen slightly. "I'm okay," I said. "Better than okay, actually. This place, these people, they're good for me." My father looked past me to where Cameron stood watching from a distance, and I saw him take in Cameron's size, his protective stance, the way his eyes tracked every movement my father made. "He one of the twins?" my father asked. "The ones who took you?" "He's Cameron," I said carefully. "And yeah, he's one of them. But they didn't take me, Dad. I came willingly to save your farm." "Which I lost anyway," my father said, and there was no bitterness in it, just acceptance. "Sold it 2 months ago. Got enough to pay off the remaining debts and put a little away for retirement." "That's good," I said, meaning it. "Really good. You doing okay in town?" "Better than I was," he admitted. "Got the job at the feed store, started going to meetings, made some friends." He paused, twisted his hat. "I'm sober, Eli, 60 days as of yesterday." The tears came without permission, hot and fast. "Dad, that's amazing." "It should have happened years ago," he said, and now his voice broke. "Should have happened before I lost your mother, before I drove your brother away, before I almost lost you too. But I'm doing it now. Better late than never." I closed the distance between us and hugged him, really hugged him, for the first time in years. He felt frailer than I remembered, but also stronger somehow, like he'd burned away everything weak and found steel underneath. "I'm proud of you," I said against his shoulder. "So damn proud." We stood like that while the morning sun climbed higher and ranch life continued around us. Eventually, my father pulled back and looked at me seriously. "Are you happy here, son? Really happy? Because if those men are hurting you or forcing you—" "They're not," I interrupted. "I promise. This arrangement, it's complicated, but it's good. They're good. And I'm staying by choice, not obligation." My father studied my face, and I saw the moment he understood there was more to the story than I was saying. His eyes flicked to Cameron again, then back to me, and something like comprehension dawned. "Oh," he said quietly. "Yeah," I confirmed, not sure what else to say. He was quiet for a long moment, processing. Finally, he said, "Are you safe? Are you cared for? Are you respected?" "Yes to all three," I said firmly. "I've never felt more valued in my life." "Then that's all I need to know." My father put his hat back on, nodded decisively. "Your happiness matters more than my understanding. If this is what you want, then I support it." The relief was dizzying. "You mean that?" "I mean it. I've spent too many years trying to control things I couldn't control, trying to make the world fit my expectations. It's time I started accepting reality instead of fighting it." He smiled, and it was genuine. "You're an adult, Eli. You get to choose your own life. I'm just glad you're choosing one that makes you happy." Cameron had been maintaining his distance, but now he approached slowly. "Mr. Fletcher," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Cameron Nelson." My father shook it, and I saw him register Cameron's firm grip, his direct eye contact. "You taking care of my boy?" my father asked. "Every day," Cameron promised. "Him and my brother both." "And he's taking care of you too, I hope. Eli's always been better at caring for others than himself." "We're working on that," Cameron said with a slight smile. "Teaching him it's okay to be taken care of sometimes." They stood there sizing each other up, and I realized this was important. Not for my father's approval, which I didn't technically need, but for his acceptance. For the possibility of not having to choose between my past and my future. Would you like to stay for lunch? I offered. Meet Wyatt, see the ranch. My father hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that, if it's not an imposition. No imposition, Cameron assured him. Any family of Eli's is welcome here. We spent the next few hours showing my father around the property. He was impressed with the operation, asked intelligent questions about the horses and the business, and seemed genuinely interested in what we'd built. When we got to the house and he met Wyatt, still on crutches but mobile now, I watched him take in the dynamic between the three of us. The way Wyatt's hand found my shoulder casually, the way Cameron stood close enough that our arms brushed, the way we moved around each other with practiced ease, finishing each other's sentences, sharing private smiles. If my father had doubts or judgments, he kept them to himself. Instead, he told stories about my childhood over lunch, made Wyatt and Cameron laugh with tales of my stubborn determination even as a kid, and slowly, tentatively, built bridges to this new life I'd created. When it was time for him to leave, he pulled me aside one last time. I was wrong, he said quietly, about so many things, but mostly about thinking I knew what was best for you. You're thriving here, Eli, I can see it, and I'm grateful to these men for giving you what I couldn't. You gave me plenty, I said. You taught me how to work hard, how to care for things, how to keep going even when everything feels impossible. Those lessons matter. Then I'm glad something good came out of those years, he said. He hugged me again tight. I'll call you next week. Maybe we can have dinner in town sometimes. I'd like that, I said honestly. I want you in my life, Dad, just on different terms than before. Different terms I can do, he promised, as long as the terms include you being happy. After he left, I stood in the driveway staring at the dust cloud his truck left behind. Cameron came up beside me, Wyatt hobbling over a moment later, and we stood there together in comfortable silence. That went better than expected, Wyatt observed. He's really trying, I said. I can see it. Change is possible, Cameron said quietly. For everyone, your father's proof of that. I turned to look at them both, these men who'd given me a home when I hadn't even known I needed one, who'd loved me in ways I was still learning to accept, who'd become my family in every way that mattered. Thank you, I said, for being patient with this, for welcoming him even though he's part of a past that wasn't always kind to me. Your past made you who you are, Wyatt said, and we love who you are. So by extension, we're grateful for all of it, the good and the bad. Cameron nodded agreement, and his arm came around my shoulders while Wyatt's hand found mine. We stood there like that, three people who'd found each other through desperation and debt, and had somehow built something beautiful from the wreckage. And I thought about how far we'd all come. My father getting sober, Wyatt learning to be vulnerable, Cameron learning to let go of control, me learning that love didn't have to look like anything except what it was. 6 weeks after his accident, Wyatt got his cast off. The doctor declared him healed, cleared him for light work with instructions to ease back into full ranch duties gradually. Wyatt, predictably, interpreted light work as do everything I did before, and Cameron and I spent the next week physically restraining him from overexerting his newly healed leg. You're like herding cats, I complained after finding him trying to break a young stallion who wasn't even remotely ready. Stubborn, impossible cats. You knew what you were getting into, Wyatt shot back, but he was grinning. Actually, I had no idea, I said. You hid this side pretty well that first month. Had to. If you'd known how much of a handful I am, you might have run. Probably, I agreed, and his grin widened. That weekend, the ranch hands insisted on throwing a celebration, partially for Wyatt's recovery, partially because we just closed a major deal selling several horses to a buyer in Texas, and partially because it had been a hard few months and everyone needed to blow off steam. They set up a bonfire in the main pasture, brought beer and food, and invited a few people from town. It was the most social event we'd hosted since I'd arrived, and I felt nervous about it in ways I couldn't quite name. "Relax," Cameron murmured as we walked out to join the party. "No one's going to care about us. They're here for the free food and good company." "But what if they figure it out?" I asked. "About us?" "Then they figure it out," Wyatt said from my other side. "Eli, we can't control what people think. We can only control how we react to it." He was right, but that didn't make it easier. I'd spent so long trying to be invisible, to not draw attention, that the idea of people knowing, really knowing, about my relationship with Cameron and Wyatt felt exposing. The party was in full swing by the time we arrived. Marco had set up speakers and music, and some of the younger ranch hands were already a few beers deep and laughing too loud at everything. It was warm and welcoming, and I felt some of my tension ease. "Eli," one of the hands called Jake, I think his name was, "come settle a bet. Marco says you can outride any of us, true or false." "Depends on the horse," I said diplomatically, but they were already dragging me toward the makeshift arena where someone had set up barrels for racing. What followed was chaos and laughter and friendly competition. I rode against Jake, then Marco, then two other hands, and somehow won more often than not, much to everyone's surprise and delight. Every time I completed a run, I'd look over to where Cameron and Wyatt stood watching, and they'd be grinning like proud parents at a school play. Later, after I'd declined any more races and people had settled around the bonfire with drinks and food, someone suggested stories. Ranch hands started trading tailies, funny ones, scary ones, stupid ones about things they'd done when they were younger and dumber. "Eli should tell one," Jake suggested. "We never hear anything about before he got here." All eyes turned to me, and I felt Cameron's hand find mine in the darkness, a silent offer of support. "I don't have anything interesting," I protested. "Tell them about your first day here," Wyatt said, his eyes glinting with mischief in the firelight. "Tell them how scared you were of us." "I wasn't scared," I lied, and everyone laughed because they knew better. "You were terrified," Cameron corrected, but his tone was fond. "Looked like you were facing down a firing squad when we showed up at your father's place." "Can you blame me?" I shot back. "Two giants showed up demanding I go with them for 3 months. Of course I was scared." "But you came anyway," Marco observed. "That takes guts." "Or stupidity," I said. "Still haven't decided which." More laughter and the conversation moved on to other topics, but I felt the weight of that moment. How scared I'd been. How much had changed. How the thing that terrified me most had become the best thing in my life. As the night wore on and people got drunker and louder, I found myself standing at the edge of the firelight with Cameron and Wyatt, watching the festivities from a slight distance. "Happy?" Wyatt asked, slipping an arm around my waist. "Very," I said honestly. "This is nice. Everyone together celebrating feels like family." "It is family," Cameron said. "Not by blood but by choice, which is sometimes stronger." I leaned into Wyatt's side, felt Cameron's hand on my shoulder, and let myself have this moment of perfect contentment. No fear, no anxiety, just the warmth of their presence and the knowledge that I belonged here. Then I heard it, a comment from across the fire, loud enough to carry but not quite directed at us. "Don't you think it's weird, the three of them?" My stomach clenched. Wyatt's arm tightened around me, and I felt Cameron go still. "Weird how?" someone else asked. "I don't know, just close, really close all the time." "So they work together, live together, makes sense they'd be close." "Yeah, but..." The first voice dropped, and I couldn't hear the rest, but I didn't need to. I knew what they were implying. Wyatt started to move forward, and I grabbed his arm. "Don't," I whispered. "It's not worth it." "They're talking about us," he said, and there was heat in his voice. "About you. I'm not going to just stand here and—" "And what?" Cameron interrupted quietly. "Confirm their suspicions by overreacting, Let it go, Wyatt. Eli's right. But Wyatt was already pulling away, crossing toward the group, and my heart started hammering because I knew this could go badly. Cameron and I followed quickly, trying to head off whatever confrontation Wyatt was about to start. "Got something to say, Jensen?" Wyatt asked, and his voice was calm but dangerous. "Because I heard you talking, and if you've got opinions about how I run my ranch or who I spend my time with, I'd rather you say it to my face." Jensen, one of the day workers, someone I barely knew, went red. I didn't mean." "You did mean," Wyatt pressed. "So mean it, say what you were going to say." The bonfire had gone quiet, everyone watching, waiting. I wanted to disappear into the ground. Jensen looked around for support, found none, and finally said, "Look, it's just people talk, okay? About you three. About how it's not normal." "Normal?" Wyatt repeated, and he laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "What's normal, Jensen? You working here for minimum wage while your wife works 2 jobs to make ends meet. Marco sending money back to Mexico to support his parents. Jake drinking himself stupid every weekend because he's trying to forget his ex. Everyone here has their shit, their complications. Ours is just more visible, Wyatt," Cameron warned, but Wyatt wasn't done. "You want to know the truth?" Wyatt continued. "Fine. Yeah, it's the three of us. Yeah, it's unconventional. And yeah, we're together in every way that matters. You got a problem with that, you know where the door is. But if you're going to stay on this ranch and collect a paycheck, you'll keep your opinions to yourself and treat Eli with the same respect you'd treat anyone else." The silence was absolute. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Wyatt had just outed us to everyone, and I didn't know if I wanted to kiss him or kill him. Jensen stared for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "Fair enough. Your ranch, your rules. I apologize if I caused offense." "Don't apologize to me," Wyatt said. "Apologize to Eli. He's the one you were talking about." Jensen turned to me, and I saw genuine remorse in his expression. "I'm sorry, Eli. It wasn't my place. Won't happen again." I managed to nod, still processing what had just happened. Around the fire, I saw a mix of reactions: surprise, acceptance, a few uncomfortable expressions, but mostly just understanding, like people had suspected but hadn't cared enough to make it an issue. Marco raised his beer. "To Eli, Cameron, and Wyatt," he said loudly, "and to minding our own damn business." Several others echoed the toast, and just like that, the tension broke. Conversations resumed. Music started again, and I stood there stunned while Wyatt pulled me close and Cameron's hand found the back of my neck. "You didn't have to do that," I said to Wyatt once we'd moved away from the crowd. "Yeah, I did," he said. "I'm tired of hiding, Eli. Tired of pretending what we have is anything less than everything. If people can't handle it, that's their problem, not ours." "Some of them might quit," Cameron pointed out, "might cause issues." "Then they quit," Wyatt said stubbornly. "But I'm not going to stand there and let people talk shit about the person I love. Not happening." I looked at Cameron, who sighed. "He's right," he admitted. "About all of it. I'm tired of hiding too. Tired of being careful, of worrying what people think. Life's too short and we almost lost him," he gestured at Wyatt. "Which reminded me how stupid it is to waste time on fear." "So we're really doing this?" I asked, "being open about us?" "If you're comfortable with it," Cameron said. "This is your choice, Eli, always your choice." I thought about it, about the fear I'd carried for so long, about what my father had said, that my happiness mattered more than his understanding, about how tired I was of looking over my shoulder, of measuring every touch, of pretending what I felt was smaller than it was. "Yeah," I said finally, "let's do this. Let's be honest about who we are." Wyatt whooped, picked me up and spun me around despite his leg probably not being ready for that kind of strain. Cameron laughed, and when Wyatt set me down, Cameron pulled us both into a hug that felt like coming home. The next morning, I woke to sun streaming through the windows and both Cameron and Wyatt still asleep beside me. It was rare. Usually, Cameron was up before dawn, but last night had run late, and we'd all been exhausted by the emotional weight of it. I lay there watching them, these impossible men who'd become my entire world, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost frightening. Because this was real now, public, official, and there was no taking it back. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Marco: some of the day workers might not come back, just a heads up. But the core crew is solid, we've got your backs. I showed it to Cameron when he woke, and he read it with a thoughtful expression. We'll need to hire new people eventually, he said. But Marco's right, the people who matter are staying. Are you worried? I asked. About the ranch? No, we'll figure it out. About us? He looked at me seriously. Not even a little bit. Last night was scary, but also freeing. I didn't realize how much energy I was spending on hiding until I stopped. Wyatt stirred, stretched, and immediately winced. Legs sore, he complained. Because you picked up Eli like he weighs nothing, Cameron said. Doctor said ease back into activities. That didn't include lifting people. Worth it, Wyatt declared, pulling me close. Did you see his face? Pure joy. I saw fear, I corrected, but also relief, so yeah, maybe joy too. We spent that morning doing what we always did, checking animals, mending what needed mending, running the countless small tasks that kept a ranch functioning. But it felt different now. Lighter. Like we'd been carrying weight we hadn't realized was there and someone had lifted it. At lunch my phone rang, my father. Hey Dad, I answered. Eli, he said, and his voice was strange. I got a call this morning from Jim Henderson. He said there's talk in town about you and the Nelson twins, said people are saying. It's true, I interrupted, not wanting to hear him repeat whatever gossip had made its way to him. Whatever they're saying, it's probably true. Cameron, Wyatt, and I were together, all three of us. Silence on the other end, long enough that I started to worry. Then, are you happy? Yes, I said simply. Are they good to you? The best. More silence. Finally, then congratulations, son. I hope you'll all be very happy together. The relief was staggering. You mean that? I do. Like I said when I visited, your happiness is what matters. The details of how you find it are between you and the people you love. He paused. Though I'll admit, 3 people is more complicated than I expected. I laughed, couldn't help it. Yeah, it's complicated, but it works for us. That's all anyone can ask for, my father said. Love that works in whatever form it takes. After we hung up, I sat there for a moment processing. My father's acceptance. The ranch hand's support. The slow realization that maybe the world was kinder than I'd been taught to believe. That maybe love in all its forms was more common, more accepted, than fear had let me believe. Cameron found me like that, staring into space with a slight smile. Good news, he asked. The best, I said. My father's okay with us, really okay. Cameron's expression softened. I'm glad, Eli. I know that mattered to you. It did, I admitted, more than I wanted it to. That night the 3 of us sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Wyatt was reading poetry aloud, something he'd written himself, about second chances and found families, and his voice was low and soothing. I've been thinking, Cameron said when Wyatt finished, about the future, about what comes next. What do you mean? I asked. I mean long term. We've been taking this a day at a time, but I think we need to start planning, thinking about what we want this to look like in 5 years, 10 years. Are we going to keep running the ranch the same way, expand? Are we going to, he paused, seemed to struggle with the words. Are we going to make this official somehow, legal? I stared at him. Legal how? I don't know exactly. Marriage isn't an option for 3 people, not legally, but there are other ways, partnerships, shared ownership, documents that give us all rights to each other in case something happens. He looked at Wyatt, then back to me. I want us protected, want to make sure no one can question our relationship or our commitment to each other. You're talking about forever, Wyatt said quietly. I am, Cameron confirmed, if that's what you both want. I thought about it. About the life we'd built, the love we'd found, the family we'd chosen. About how young I still was, barely 20, and how terrifying it was to commit to forever when I'd barely started living. But then I looked at them, really looked, and realized I'd already committed. The moment I chose to stay. The moment I admitted I loved them. The moment I stopped running from what scared me and started running toward what made me happy. I want forever, I said, with both of you, however we can make that work. Me too, Wyatt agreed. Let's figure out the details, make this as official as we can. Cameron's smile was brighter than I'd ever seen it. Okay then, we'll talk to a lawyer, set up paperwork, make sure we're all protected and recognized in the ways that matter. Just one thing, I said. Can we also just enjoy this? Enjoy being together without always worrying about the future, because I love you both and I want forever, but I also want right now. Right now works too, Wyatt said, pulling me onto his lap. In fact, I'm a big fan of right now. Cameron settled beside us, and we sat like that as the sun finally dipped below the horizon and stars began to appear. Three people who'd found each other through desperation and made something beautiful out of necessity. Thank you, I said into the comfortable silence. For what? Cameron asked. For taking me, for giving me a home, for loving me even when I didn't know how to love myself. That's what family does, Wyatt said. Loves you until you learn to love yourself, then keeps loving you anyway. And as the night deepened around us, filled with the sounds of the ranch settling and the warmth of their presence, I realized that sometimes the best stories don't have neat endings. Sometimes they just keep going, day by day, choice by choice, love by love. The lawyer's office smelled like old books and new beginnings. Cameron, Wyatt, and I sat across from Ms. Patterson while she explained the documents she'd drawn up, partnership agreements, medical proxies, shared property ownership, wills that ensured we'd all be taken care of if something happened. It's not marriage, she said carefully, but legally speaking, it's as close as we can get for three people. You'll be bound together in every way that matters. That's all we want, Cameron said, and his hand found mine under the table. We signed the papers, all three of us, and walked out of that office knowing we'd just made something permanent, something real, something that would last long after the ink dried. The ranch was thriving. We'd hired new hands to replace the ones who'd left, and they came without judgment, just a desire to work hard and be part of something good. Word had spread about us, the unconventional family running the Nelson Ranch, and we'd become something of a local curiosity, but mostly people left us alone. My father visited once a month, and his relationship with Cameron and Wyatt had grown from wary acceptance to genuine friendship. He'd been sober for over a year now, had started dating someone from his AA meetings, and looked happier than I'd ever seen him. And me, I was learning that love didn't have to look like anything except what it was. That family could be chosen instead of given. That home was wherever the people you loved were gathered. On the anniversary of the day I'd first arrived at the ranch, 2 years to the day since Cameron and Wyatt had shown up at my father's farm and changed everything, we threw a party. Not a big one, just the ranch hands and a few friends from town. The same people who'd been at the bonfire when Wyatt outed us, plus a few who'd come into our lives since. Marco made a toast. To the Nelson family, he said, raising his glass. May they always be as weird and wonderful as they are right now. Everyone laughed, drank, and the party continued into the night. But later, after everyone had left and it was just the three of us again, we stood in the same spot where we'd stood 2 years ago. I was so scared of you, I said to Cameron and Wyatt. Both of you thought you were going to destroy my life. And instead, Wyatt prompted. Instead you saved it, I said simply. Gave me everything I didn't know I needed. Cameron pulled me close. Wyatt's arms coming around both of us, and we stood there under a sky full of stars, surrounded by land we'd tended together, living a life we'd built from scratch. "I love you," I said, "both of you, forever." "Forever," they echoed, and it sounded like a promise, like a vow, like the beginning of everything that mattered. So what happens next? Do you want to hear about the day we expanded the ranch? About the challenges we faced when Cameron's distant relatives tried to contest our partnership? About the first time Wyatt published his poetry under his real name and how terrified he was? Hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if this story touched your heart, and leave a comment telling me, should I tell you what happened next? Because this love story, it's far from over.